Most of you know that I just got back from 5 days from Snowmass, Colorado, near Aspen, at St. Benedict's Trappist Monastery. They've had an annual interfaith dialogue going there, the Snowmass Interfaith Dialogue. This is the 32nd consecutive year, but the first time that I was honored to be able to attend. Interfaith, this is not something newfangled, in the last couple of decades. I showed this picture once before, a couple of years ago at Assisi. This is a picture, you can see it on the table later, done by Hakuin himself, the 17th century Japanese master, of the three religions. You have the Buddha in the center, and I guess he's making his statement that way. And on the right side is Confucius, and on the left is Lao Tzu, Taoism, I Ching, Tao Te Ching. And they're both looking at the same pot, whatever it is, the empty pot, or the pot full of honey, or whatever it is of reality. So they all contribute. They're all together, brothers. So this is nothing new, and reality is nothing new. And it's always new, but it's the same important coming together. So first of all, I was delighted to go back to Snowmass. The last time I was there, I've been there 4 or 5 times, but the last time was in 2003, precisely for a sesshin with Roshi Kennedy. It's nature is a wonderful place to get close to reality. You can always find a page a day, a Zen calendar quote to fit the situation. So a few days ago it was from Albert Einstein, where it said, "Look deeply into nature, and everything will become clear to you." Yes. And I remember some of my first experiences of oneness, or memorable experiences of oneness, were there with the chipmunks and the sagebrush and the mountains and the hummingbirds at Snowmass. The evolution of the dialogue is interesting. It's been fairly public, and the way it's progressed. In the early years, it was dialogue, among the various traditions in terms of worldview, and metaphysics, and psychology, epistemology, and all of that stuff. But after a few years, it became clear that it was a more fruitful approach in the long run to share contemplative experience. So it became more, it's not the Snowmass interfaith, but the Snowmass interspiritual dialogue. And you can find, these points of agreement that are quite some years old now, but which show how all the traditions can agree and did agree, the representatives there, on these 8 points to begin with, including Christianity and Buddhism. So, for example, I'll go through them briefly. The world religions bear witness to the experience of ultimate reality. That's the phrase they could all agree on. To which they give various names. Allah, God, Buddha, nature, etc. So we bear witness to the experience of ultimate reality. Second, ultimate reality cannot be limited by any name or concept. We all agree on that, including Christians. Can't be limited by any name or concept. This ultimate reality, 3, is the ground of infinite potentiality and actualization. So that's what gives oomph, power, whether you speak of creation or not, they don't all. It's nonetheless the ground of all the potentiality and energy. Interesting, the 4th one. Faith, who knew? We could agree on using that word. Faith is opening, accepting, and responding to ultimate reality. It makes precise. Faith, in this sense, precedes every belief system. So we're not talking about belief systems here when we talk about faith. We're talking about even Hakuin himself, that I just mentioned, talks about faith in the sense that you entrust yourself and you give yourself to this process, to this pursuit, of spiritual realization. And it's that engagement that we can call faith. They agreed you can use that word if that's what we mean, preceding any particular belief system. So there's that dedication to the spiritual process across the traditions. Number 5, the potential for human wholeness. And just as ultimate reality has many names, they call this wholeness by many names, such as enlightenment, salvation, there you have Buddhist and Christian, transcendence, transformation, blessedness. Human wholeness, this potential is present in every human being. No one's excluded. Number 6. Ultimate reality, and this is important, ultimate reality may be experienced not only through religious practices, but also through nature, as I've just pointed out. Art, human relationships, and service to others. I may have gone through these before, but it's important to go back to them. So number 7, as long as the human condition is experienced as separate from ultimate reality, it is subject to ignorance and illusion, poisons, weakness and suffering, suffering in the sense of human suffering that we cause by our own complicity with the dukkha, as the Buddhists call it, the inadequacy or the insufficiency of human life. So as long as we are separate, we experience ourselves as separate from ultimate reality, we are subject to all sorts of negativity. And finally, disciplined practice is essential to the spiritual life, yet spiritual enlightenment is not the result of one's own efforts. Now, Christianity always says that, and sometimes they say, oh, well, Buddhism thinks you can do it all on your own. No, we all agree that whatever the engagement and however much effort goes into it, that spiritual attainment is not the result of one's own efforts, but the result of the experience of oneness with ultimate reality, which is ultimately experienced as a gift. So all the traditions could agree on that. It's interesting. Now, later, they came up with other types of practices that are common to everybody: compassion, service, moral precepts and virtues, meditation techniques, diet, exercise, fasting, those things appear in all traditions. Use of music or chanting and sacred symbols, living in the present moment, pilgrimage, study of sacred texts, and in some traditions, relationship with the teacher, mantras or sacred words, silence and solitude, movement and dance, and community. And we may add a few more too afterwards. We have to extend our practice into all aspects of our life. Certainly Christianity and Zen emphasize that very strongly. Humility, gratitude, and a sense of humor are indispensable in the spiritual life. So a grouchy saint is not a saint. And, interestingly, prayer is communion with ultimate reality. Now, if you define it that way, everybody can agree that whatever we do is prayer, even Buddhists. If by that, we simply mean communion with ultimate reality. So, whether it is regarded as personal, impersonal, or beyond the both. I had a little Dharma duel with Sensei Janet Abels once about whether Zen is prayer. She said yes, but no. She said no, yes, but no, but yet. No, she said the opposite. It's not, it is, but it's not. Well, you can argue it depends how you define prayer. If prayer is communion with ultimate reality, well then we can all agree that they all have quotes prayer. Now what we did, we had, I didn't even count the number of people. I never got around to counting. There was, I think, between 16 and 20 of us. Half were experienced people who had been there before, and half were invitees like myself. And we had representatives from all the major traditions. Well, if you don't, maybe not all, but we had a number of American Hindu monks. We had some Buddhists, especially. We had we had a wonderful Orthodox rabbi with his son who was there. A marvelous Muslim practitioner, and one especially, one particular fellow who was a Native American practitioner. So it was quite wonderful, and we shared experience. And there was also, in addition to Father Thomas Keating, who I'll come back to in a moment, we had one of the young monks from the monastery, an Irish American from the Bronx, who was 39, and been there for 7 years. He participated as well. That was wonderful. But what our task was as the new invitees was the second day to come up with, among ourselves, through dialogue. And remember, this is deep dialogue, or dialogic dialogue as it's been called, where we really deeply listen to one another. Another page a day from, I think, yesterday says, most people listen with the intention of speaking, and instead of with the intention of understanding. Okay, I can kind of vaguely hear you talking, but I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next to make my point, to win over you. So no, and we actually came up we astonished everybody, I have to say. We came up with, in a little over an hour, we came up with some additional points of where we can move now. So we're continuing the interspiritual dialogue, but it's more on the level of how can we bring this into action to move the movement forward. And we came up with these points. So recognize, first of all, that we are united in the human condition. Father Keating especially liked that one. So we start by recognizing we're all in this together. Here we are, wherever we are on this planet, right here and now, and we're all in it together, whatever our tradition or lack thereof. We're all in it together, we all share the human condition, and that should be a tremendous unifying bond, since we all know it's kind of a rocky boat, Put it that way. 2, we pledge to be living examples of love and forgiveness. So in this day and age, one of our members especially insisted on forgiveness, and we debated that a little bit, where they wanted to highlight that, and I think we did. Because religions are causing so much violence in the world, especially among themselves, between themselves, very often, that, as Jesus said so forcefully many times, it's forgiveness and love, of course, but forgiveness that we need to model. So we're not just talk about it, agree on it, but model it, bring it out into action in the world today. All of us, no matter what level of practice we're at. 3, to be open to experiencing others' traditions. So, open to respect others' traditions, yes. Open to learn about them, but no, to experience them. You can actually experience others' traditions, as I have with Buddhism and Christianity, for example. So it's moving a step further. And number 4 is in 2 parts. Within our own communities, wherever we find ourselves, our religious communities, and for future generations. A, to have the courage to promote respect of others' traditions. Which requires courage sometimes, to promote respect among the fanatics and the small-minded, etc. We all start that way. But to have the courage to promote, and to highlight the elements of our own traditions which open up to the validity of others' traditions. It's a point that Paul Nitter makes very well there, that to highlight elements of our own tradition which validate other traditions. Of Christ is the cosmic Christ, well then he embraces all. So we should be able to, that should help us to be open to others' traditions and to experience. I should mention too that there was a Protestant pastor from Texas who was a great spirit too. Booming voice, of course, but wonderful heart. So in other words, it brings it out to action within our own communities to promote religious dialogue. And there are, you do find common elements in the actual practices which are interesting. I just want to point out two things I discovered right in the course of the dialogue, or was reminded of. We did a zikr, which is the whirling dance of the Muslim whirling dance. I've done it once before on an interfaith exchange, an interfaith meeting, so I was considered the old hand at it, even though I was still terrible. But it's fascinating. You're whirling around yourself, basically, the axis of your own heart, and your attention should actually be focused on your heart. And you start like this, but then slowly you blossom like a flower as you're whirling around, and you're like this, which is the right hand receiving gifts from heaven, and then your left hand is distributing down, up, down, left, right, those left, right symbolism again in that way. And you whirl counterclockwise, which is fascinating, because in Hinduism and Buddhism, including Zen, when you have the chakras and the movement of the, it's actually the swastika, but it's a symbol of the chakras movement. If it's to the left, it means you're moving towards the absolute emptiness, the eternal. So that's when you do your mystical dance, you dance counterclockwise. See how it comes up in all the traditions? It's a deep esoteric connection among the traditions. And Zen Hinduism as well. The other thing I discovered, which was fascinating, we did a little tour of the monastery, and they have a 12th century wooden altar in the church, which I actually never really noticed and focused on before. So the brother who was with us during the days pointed it out on the tour, and I think I mentioned before in my teishos, the symbol for the medical symbol for the caduceus, which whirls around like this with wings and a point on the top, which is a symbol of the chakras and the interweaving of the energy channels in the human body, with the point or the pearl of consciousness on the top and the wings going up higher. It's just a medical symbol, but that has that deeper esoteric meaning. On the altar from the 12th century, you had four panels, and one was a chalice with a host over it, with a face on it. So Christ, with wings, ascending. But 2 panels over, you actually had the same 3 intertwining vines. There was a vine, the Eucharist, the wine of the Eucharist, the true vine, the one vine, and on the top, instead of the pearl of consciousness, you had the host again, with the face. So Christ is on the top of the whole thing, with wings. Wow. So we adapted to Christianity this ancient symbol of the Kundalini. 12th century! So this is New Age, it's not New Age. And it shows, how the traditions come together on this deeper esoteric level. I like the esoteric level, so I'm just plugging that. But pointing to the commonalities that are hidden if you just look for them. In other words, highlight the elements of your own tradition which open up to the validity of others. And finally, I'd like to share a little bit about the final talk that Father Thomas gave. This was the first year, he's been the guiding force all throughout. This is the first year he was not able to participate daily. because he's too infirm now. One of the days he went to the hospital and he's totally worn out. He's 93. But to our surprise and delight, he was able to come the final evening to speak to us. It's one of those memorable moments in your life when you know you're in the presence of the saint, and it just blows your mind. But he spoke about oneness. He spoke about the fact that he used a fairly familiar trope, which I think maybe especially you find in the Sufis, the three stages. There is an other, God, the absolute, whatever. Second stage, become the other. And the third stage, there is no other. The first stage, there is another. The last stage, there isn't another. Because you're it, or it's you, or whatever. I mean, it's just whatever it is. It's just the one, the oneness. So as he said, you're in God, and everyone else is in God, and there's only God. Or there's only Buddha in the end. There's only absolute. There's only emptiness. There's only whatever you want to call it. It's all one. He didn't quote St. Augustine, but you could say St. Augustine's way of putting it was, in the end, there's only one Christ loving himself. Another way of saying there's only the one, there's only God. And that's where I think he himself, Father Thomas, was. And you could see him just ready to die any moment, and he would be delighted. Basically said that. But then he explained further, what you discover, and he was discovering it in his own weakness, his own feebleness, the weakness of God. When I'm weak, I'm strong. And that's a revelation of who God is, just as Christ weak on the cross is a revelation of God. So it's the humility of God, the emptiness. Wow, there you are. Christianity and Zen are closer than we thought. Or as he put it, Father Thomas, basically quoting John of the Cross, when you know nothing, when you possess nothing, cling to nothing, and when you are nothing, then you know who God is. Then you're like God, because that's who God is. You couldn't get more Buddhist than that. You know nothing, you cling to nothing, you have nothing, and you are nothing, which is pretty much a quote from John of the Cross. Then you are God. Indistinguishable from God, one with God, which John of the Cross also says, if you want to put it that way. Because that's how God is. Knows nothing, clings to nothing, is not. I.e., nothingness, the ultimate name for God of the Kabbalah. And no thing. It's complete. Now that fits ever so conveniently into my subject last week's teisho, which is when you and God both disappear. Exactly. No self, and no God is something you can point out to or cling to or be separate from. So that was wonderful. Not only to have that said, but to see it embodied in front of you. So that was very moving and memorable. And the whole time was. Does anyone have any remarks or questions?
Ponyo was there too?
No, I mentioned, I quoted him from the book. He wasn't there, no. So let's dedicate ourselves with about 4 vows to bringing this to our own communities and to our own lives as well.